Love is messy and requires commitment. Will Hal Jordan finally learn this lesson? We'll see. Hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. First and only warning, many spoilers lie ahead. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on July 9th, originally published June 11th. Just a couple, really, for me to talk about, and one just barely. The first would be Part 4 of 4, Countdown to, or Suicide Squad Dream Team. It's part of the Countdown to Absolute Power. The focus has been on the character Dreamer, and Amanda Waller really trying to mold her, manipulate her, and get her on the Suicide Squad. I've not found this story super compelling, in part because I'm not really interested in several of the characters that are part of this team and part of this story, and one of them being Dreamer doesn't particularly interest me, but certainly not Bizarro Superman. Not into that. So, but you know, it's a decent enough lead up, and I assume that Dreamer will be a significant part of whatever happens in Absolute Power. So, I imagine I'll be glad that at least I was up to speed on what happened in this miniseries. But that's all I have to say about that. The other book I read this week was Green Lantern number 12, which picks up where I was very interested to see where they would go from where they left off. Carol Ferris was at the altar, as it were, in Vegas, about to get married when a star sapphire ring shows up. She's already having misgivings about the guy she's going to marry, and when that ring shows up, she says, Hal, that's the last time we see her. And then it's in the pages of number 12 that we cut back to Hal Jordan and just how everything has hit the fan, with him discovering that the United Planets has basically been overtaken by shape-shifting Durlans, and they are just on the ropes against them and about to go down. And then Carol Ferris, the only remaining Star Sapphire since the core of them was taken out by the United Planets, shows up very suddenly and saves the day, gets Hal out of there, and takes him back to Earth where he can recover and they can share a really, to me, valuable moment. While he's recovering, Carol quietly sits down next to him and said, I was just a few words from getting married, from doing what I thought was the right thing, the predictable thing, trying to figure out a way to break whatever this is between us. But I don't think it can be broken, meaning I think this connection between them that's been going on, they've been the on-again, off-again relationship of Hal Jordan throughout the decades. She says, Hal, I've known you my entire life. I know what you are and I know what you aren't. And at some point, I thought I wasn't giving myself a fair chance. No one stays with the first person they've loved, right? They move on, they discover themselves. But you know what I discovered, Hal? I don't want anyone else. I don't want someone that's predictable. I don't want someone that doesn't challenge me. I want you and whatever insanity comes with that stupid grin of yours. And then he says, Carol, and he's about to say, presumably I love you, but then there's an explosion that rocks the trailer that they're in, and bad guys show up, and, you know, we're going to see what happens next time. But I thought there was just some really neat points in what Carol was saying here that are worth focusing on, maybe especially in light of the fact that this represents something much closer to agape love, the love that Jesus taught in the New Testament. And there's a form of that Greek word that is used in Green Lantern comics. The queen of these Amazons, if I remember correctly, her name is Agapo or something like that, but it's clearly this modified version or this form of the word that's taken from the same root. And so somebody, I assume it was Jeff Johns at that time, knew just enough and explored just enough of New Testament Greek. That's probably where that's most known for being in terms of where people run into that word and why today. So somebody did just enough digging to really bring that little nugget out. But the Star Sapphires have really, I don't know that they've really been about a commitment to love. I haven't been following like everything that the Star Sapphires have done, and my memory is crappy. But my impression is that they kind of treat love in the same kind of romantic sense that would be meant when other people say love, or love like you really love ice cream. It's just something that you really enjoy. Whereas agape love is this selfless commitment to someone else. It's not about this kind of selfish enjoyment of something. And so that's what Carol is kind of touching on a little bit here. I mean, first, she has a realistic view of Hal. She's not all starry and, rose-tinted glasses when looking at him. She says, I know what you are, and I know what you aren't. So she's seeing his flaws as well as the things that she appreciates about him, I think is some of the intent of that. Then she makes this really interesting observation that I wish more people would understand. She says, I thought I wasn't giving myself a fair chance. No one stays with the first person they've loved, right? Well, I do. I know a lot of people that do. I think that's probably more common in the church because I think there's a better understanding, at least in biblically oriented churches, on the nature of agape love and what that means for spousal love. I think a lot of people feel like they need to play the field or look around or something, or some people even feel like they need to sleep around to make sure they're quote-unquote compatible with the person they're going to end up with or whatever. And that's totally missing the point of this purer, more noble, virtuous love that says, I'm going to commit to this person and I am going to love them. I mean, one of the many beautiful things about that love is that it's not just based on someone really super enjoying you. It's based on them being absolutely committed to you without condition. And so Carol is clearly coming from that broken philosophy of like, it's foolish to just stay with the first person that you fall in love with because there might be something better out there. That's a very selfish view of love. Now, do people make poor choices by marrying the first person they fall in love with? Yes. But that's not a result of their love. It's a result of their lack of wisdom and understanding, counting the cost beforehand as much as they can, at least. What are some of the incompatibilities, the things that are going to be difficult about being bonded, connected, committed to this person for the rest of my life? That's where I think a lot of problems happen. They're not really counting the cost and truly engaging in the fullness of agape love, or at least attempting to, and having that as the bar in their mind when they, marry somebody that the first person they love, and then it all goes to crap later. Anyway, she goes on to describe what she wants about Hal, and it is, there's a little bit more maturity to it, I think, than some other people might have about this. I don't think it's like super sage wisdom that she's sharing here, but I think there is some maturity to it that I appreciate. She says, I don't want anyone else. I don't want someone that's predictable. I don't want someone that doesn't challenge me. So predictable, meaning I assume there's some safety, some comfort in that. I don't want someone that doesn't challenge me. So in both of those, she's saying that I think what she's saying here is I want someone that I'm committing it to a partnership with, not someone that is just going to be perfect and going to fit me wonderfully and there won't be any challenge involved. She's maybe even recognizing the good in having a relationship with someone that is not perfect and needs to be worked on. That's so much of how we grow as people, whether it's in romantic relationships or friendships, by committing to friendships and working through those incompatibilities and those differences. That is such a great source of growth and maturity. And then we just see that love maturing as well, and it just becomes more beautiful as time goes on, as opposed to the very shallow love, quote-unquote love, that so many people have and end up basing their decisions to marry on. And then when things go south and they're not compatible, things aren't working out, they dissolve the marriage. She says, not only am I ready for something that might have some complication with it, but I actually want someone that's not predictable, and I want someone that's going to challenge me. She says, I want you and whatever insanity comes with that stupid grin of yours. She knows that he brings trouble into his life and to the lives of those around him. And so it's just wonderful that she's saying, I am committed to you, and I want you despite all of the difficulty and mess that is bound to come with that. I mean, this is a lot closer. I complained last issue that I was like, man, these marriage vows that they have in Vegas are ridiculous. And I think the writing was intended to showcase that, and that they ought to be more meaningful. These words here are a lot more substantive and meaningful than the so-called marriage vows of the last issue. And, you know, Jeremy Adams, as I've been following him in The Flash particularly, I think clearly has a love and appreciation for family. And probably along with that, an appreciation for marriage. As I've mentioned before, I don't know if he is a Christian, but I can't help but suspect with some of the things he's injected into his writing that he has at least been surrounded by Christian influence and has appreciated a lot of that influence. Whether he realizes it or not, he's benefited from it, and it's finding its way into his writing. And so I don't have any thoughts that like this is going to turn into marriage right away, but I hope, as I said last time, I hope that Jeremy Adams, or those who care about this relationship being like the Lois and Clark of Green Lantern, I hope that the writing in this book for a long time will continue to develop this relationship, and yes, that it would come to the point of maturity where they get married, you know. And then we get to really long-term appreciate their love as they are committed in the midst of difficulties with each other. That is so much more interesting to me than the so predictable CW romances in comics and, of course, on the CW, that it's like whenever there's a fight, it's like the relationship is in jeopardy. That's like, oh, are they going to stay together or are they going to break up? And I think that's so old news, and I find it so much more rich and interesting when there's a conflict that needs to be resolved between two people, but it's not a matter of, oh my gosh, are they going to break up? The question is, are they going to resolve this, or are they just going to remain miserable and have just this horrible relationship, a loveless marriage or whatever, you know? I mean, I think that is equally, actually just for the sake of its novelty, a lot more compelling than the alternative. So I hope that there's a lasting vision for a long-term, basically permanent, committed relationship. Marriage, of course, would be great, but I'm not holding out hope for that. These are comic books, you know. But man, I would love to see this relationship mature and for them to really get into some more interesting and nuanced territory when it comes to conflict in committed relationships. All right, well, I think that's about it. The ring selection for this week is, of course, the what color is this? The sapphire. Is the color sapphire, or are they just called anyway? It's the star sapphire ring, representing love. I almost chose hope because I was like, oh man, I'm hopeful for this comic, but I was like, oh no, this is just bringing to mind so many thoughts about the nature of love in its purest, most virtuous form, and so certainly that's the thought that I'm left with. And I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, I would love to get your thoughts in the comments below. What has grabbed your attention about these books, or maybe something else from DC recently that I have not commented on? I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. And then as always, I hope you'll check out christiangeekcentral.com. A ton more content made for you there as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.